All right, guys. So I'm gonna explain what words should I make into Anki cards. Like a lot of people kind of have trouble, like, like what words from my immersion should I actually Anki? This is a very specific question, and I think like it really depends on what stage you're at, right? So usually, like if you're in the beginning stages, you're not gonna know like a lot of words. Okay, like you're gonna be immersing in something, and you're not gonna understand like a lot of it. There's gonna be a lot of it that's gonna be incomprehensible in the beginning. So what words should you add into Anki? I recommend just adding high frequency words. So basically, find like a list of like, you know, 1,000 of the most frequently used words in the specific domain that you want to master, right? So like, if you're watching like French YouTube, then find a list of 10,000 words that would be commonly used in on French YouTube, and just basically like make 10 cards a day, right? And just start with that. Or if you do end up immersing and you do find some words that pop up to you, then you would put that in too. Like I recommend like also trying to like mine some words from immersion, even if it's like larger incomprehensible. When you immerse in the beginning, all of it's gonna be incomprehensible, but then there's gonna be like a couple words that pop out. Like there's gonna be a think, like there's gonna be a couple words that like you keep hearing it over and over again. You're like, dude, what does that word mean? Like and you're kind of trying to guess what the word means, and you look it up, and you're like, okay, you can put that word into Anki too. But usually like what you can do is you can use AI for this. You can just chat GPT like, yo, like what's the most frequently used words on French YouTube, or like if you want to watch like slice life anime, or slice of life battle shonen, right? Like just easy anime. You can just basically ask ChatGPT, okay, what's the most commonly used words in like Naruto, or like most commonly 10,000 of the most commonly used words in like battle shonen, and like ChatGPT would just like give you a list, right? So I recommend using that type of frequency list, because you're learning words that are like super relevant. If you really like prompt as like very frequent, like most commonly used frequently, like 1,000, the first 1,000 words are like make up a ton of the language. All right, so if you just learn the first 1,000, then that's what you guys should be focusing on in the beginning stages. Now, when you're like in the advanced stages, you wanna not be so relentless with mining every single unknown word, because there's going to be a lot of words that are going to be within reach, which means that there's going to be a lot of words that are going to be super easy to learn. Like you look at a word and you know what it means, and you know what the definition is. It's like there's some words out there, especially in French, right, with the Latin roots, and then especially with Japanese with kanji. There's going to be some words where like you know what the definition of the word is by looking at the word, and you be able to guess the reading too. So in this situation, you shouldn't actually mine it, right? Don't mine words that are obvious when you look at them, or like if there's like a European, like if you're learning a European language and you see like a French word that's like it's so obvious what this word means just by looking at it, even if you haven't acquired the word yet. If you just look at the word and you look it up once, and you're like, oh wow, this is an easy word, then don't mine it. Like you want to mine words that are like you think are going to be difficult to internalize through immersion alone. Because there's gonna be some words that are really hard to get through immersion, which is basically like complex kanji. So if you like, come across a word that uses a very complex, kanji, or like, just a completely different reading of kanji, like, you may know the kanji, the words, but like, it just has a very unpredictable, type of reading. Those are the type of words you want to put in Anki. Or like, let's say you look at a word, or like you look at an expression, and you're like, the meaning of the expression was unpredictable, like which meant that like when you looked up the definition of the word or the expression, it came out a different like definition than what you thought. So if it has an unexpected definition, then that's when you put into Anki too. So you want to be mining words that are a little bit harder to master through immersion alone. But there's gonna be some words out there, and a lot of it. This is like the majority of the words. There's gonna be a lot of words when you like immerse where it's gonna be within reach. It's like low hanging fruit that you can just grab real quick, right? That you can just learn like this, right? And you can just look at it once or twice, and you can like immediately get it. So you don't have to mine every single word you see in immersion. Like especially like when you're at the advanced levels where like there's very few words that you don't know. I wouldn't mine every single word. I would just mine like the words that seem to be far within reach, where like you might not be able to learn this through immersion alone. So that's kind of like those are kind of the guidelines of like what to put into Anki, because Anki is pretty useful for memorizing the readings of kanji, and that's actually something that's very hard to just do through immersion. Because the reality is, like, learning how to read kanji is actually largely like sometimes a conscious skill, you know? Of course, we subconsciously internalize it through like listening. So if you're to listen to anime and, you know, we acquired a certain sound effect, then like it's very easy to acquire that word with that sound effect. And when we read it, it's like we just match like what we know through ear with the reading. But it's like if you're learning a word through reading, like you have to memorize every single reading for every single word, right? And that's actually really hard to do, especially if you just only do it through reading. This is when Anki comes in, and you can actually nail down the readings of kanjis that are like very obscure. Like when you read like light novels, or when you read like, let's say, harder anime, there's gonna be some words that are gonna have like, you know, unpredictable kanji readings, or there's gonna be like some new kanji that you've never seen before. Like, and knowing the readings for those words, that's where Anki can come in to be very useful, right? So then when you get enough exposure with that word, then you eventually acquire it and internalize it. And then when you end up hearing it in your immersion, then it's like, okay, then I'm like completely solidified it. So, you know, you want to be very selective, you know, with what words you want to put into Anki, because there's some words that you don't need to put into Anki, right? Because it's just going to be so easy to look at, you know, like Latin roots in French, and then like, you know, with kanji in Japanese. So, you know, that's like those are kind of the guidelines I would recommend you guys for deciding what words to add into Anki. And that's what I've been doing, you know, like I just basically add words that I think are like far within reach, or like just have, like I'm not able to tell the meaning of the word just by looking at it, like, you know. So that's what I would do. But at least in the beginning stages, to basically recap, like you want to be memorizing the most frequently used words, like when you're in the beginning stages, like the 10,000 most frequently used words, right? Once you go through that list, then that is when you should start putting effort into trying to find words in your immersion, right? Because once you memorize all the, you know, first most frequently used like 10,000 words, and you've been immersing, like, you know, if you're just like freaking, you know, being a dumbass and not immersing, then you're not gonna be prepared for it. But like if you've been immersing the entire time, right, you should be prepared to find new words in your immersion. So now it's time for you to actually immerse and grab words from your immersion. And when you're in the intermediate stages where you're like not advanced yet, there's still going to be a lot of words you can mine. Like you'll be able to find 10 words within a single day, you know, for you to mine. Because there's still a lot of words left. Like even though you've mastered the basics, there's still a lot of words for you to learn. So, you know, that's when like you don't need to use AI to help you with the words, because it's like you can just find all the words with your immersion. But you're not advanced enough to where like you don't run into the problem of not finding enough words to mine, right? Because you're not advanced yet. But like, you know, in intermediate level, basically just try to Anki words that come up in your immersion, right? And in order to avoid memorizing overly excessive hard words in the beginning, just don't immerse in hard content. Like, to completely avoid memorizing any word that's like super obscure, don't even try to immerse in like content that's hard. Like, don't try to watch a hard anime. Don't try to read a light novel. Like, one of the biggest mistakes I made in the beginning was like reading all these hard light novels. Like, I read freaking ReZero. Like, ReZero Volume 1 was like my first ever light novel I ever read. It took me a month to read my first light novel. And I was like 6 months in my immersion, right? And I just became literate. Like, I didn't tell you guys, but like, you know, when I was learning Japanese, I literally was completely illiterate for like 5 months. And then I basically dedicated a month and a half roughly to like really learn kanji, learn hiragana, learn katakana, right? And I was able to very quickly catch my listening ability to my reading ability, which was very quick to do. And then I just jumped straight into ReZero light novel. Like, I was like, dude, guys, don't even try doing this, because I looked at the cards that like I had like back in 2021 when I basically, or like 2020, like just in 2020, yeah, when I was reading ReZero for the first time. There was a lot of words in there that like were extremely rare. Like, I was memorizing words that were like so rare that like natives didn't know. And I was like not even like, I didn't even arrive at basic fluency yet. Like, I was like still like in the beginning stages, but I was memorizing all these like crazy hard words. So in order to avoid coming across those words and mining those words through your immersion, just don't even immerse in hard material in the first place. Like, there's no point trying to immerse in crazy hard material because there's no use for it. Okay, so make sure you guys are immersing in content that's like at your level. So if you're a beginner, immerse in easy content. If you're advanced, make sure that you have mastered /live domain before you try to go to novels or try to go to harder like anime or like content, right? You know, so like just make sure you guys are mastering one domain before you try to go to the next one, okay? And just make sure that, you know, you get the words from immersion. But that's basically like what I would do for, you know, Anki. You know, Anki is very important. Anki does it does expedite the process a lot, right? This is what makes the difference between, you know, native speakers and extremely fast like native like language learners. Like the reason why like some language learners that are like non-native like me are able to reach super high levels of a language super fast is not just because of immersion. It's also because of Anki. Like, dude, like Anki is just a freaking hack, you know? In all stages, like whether you're in the beginning, intermediate, or advanced stages, Anki is still relevant, you know, across all the journeys, across any level of difficulty, across any, you know, like domain or, you know, level you are with the language ability. Like Anki's still gonna be useful. Like even from my English, like if I wanted to really improve my English, right, which I don't have any intention of doing, because it's like, dude, I'm a native speaker of English. Like who wants to freaking improve their own native language? You know what I mean? Like I don't care about doing that, you know. But if I literally wanted to improve my English, like I would pick up Anki, bro. Like if I was like, you know, if I wanted to read like, you know, maybe nonfiction books, like I have a couple of nonfiction books here that I've never read, like Steven Pinker, and all that. Like he uses a lot of like, you know, very technical, you know, academic vocabulary. You know, I go to college, of course, but it's like, you know, like if you read one of his books, it's like he speaks in he writes in a very sophisticated way. So it's like, you know, if I want to be able to master that domain, then I'm gonna have to pick back Anki up in order to like really bridge the gap. Even though I don't need to use Anki, you know, like I could just like immerse and like have those words learned by itself. But if I want to reach it faster, then Anki will help. So even for a native language, like Anki does help, right? So Anki really does help, but you have to make sure that you're supplementing this with immersion, because that's like the most effective way to learn language. So that's basically what I'll do for the Anki cards, guys.